Okay, so I'm going to respond to some questions, after which we will tidy up, conclude the retreat. Some of these are comments. Such as person says, finds it difficult to access body and heart intelligence through sitting and breathing mindfulness. They invoke an overlay of past misguided but well-intentioned effort. Through standing, walking, lying down and upright openness, I can listen to what my citta is saying, softly indeed. Wisdom and heart expression arise spontaneously, unwinding of sadness also, release and deepening. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it's I think mindfulness of breathing is unfortunately quite tricky for people. Buddha presented it as a great gift. But he did seem to think that it took a bit of preparatory work to get there. I think when he the sutta that's dedicated to it talks about a big gathering at Savatthi, main monastery, where everybody was gathering together, and all the great teachers were there teaching people for up to 3 months solid. So a very long, intensive retreat. At the end of it, the Buddha said, doing pretty good. I'm going to stay here, and as a special thing, I'm going to teach you Anapanasati. So a lot of the preliminary stuff is about, well, is it preliminary? I mean, it's just the foundation work, which is on many levels, internalizing ethics, internalizing loving kindness. So it's not just something you do to others, but an atmosphere you live within, getting a sense of dispassion, getting your efforts, your energies right, so you're not pushing too hard, getting the heart awakened, so the heart is leading the practice rather than the ideas-driven mind, so you're not just going into various tight little boxes trying to get it going. And so that's why I often recommend just, get the upright body feeling safe and comfortable, and just get the heart to not feel under pressure. And it will open by itself. And the simplest stable feature we can feel is the upright body. Of course, you can do that standing, sitting, or even walking. Getting a sense of relaxing around that, which again, feeling of safety, seclusion, ability to do that. Those encouragements, the heart will tend to open by itself because it doesn't want to be closed. And even then, you often have to meet various peaks of agitated heart territory, fearfulness or self-criticism and so forth. So actually meeting that is where you find breathing becomes an ally rather than a practice that you have to do. That's the way to look at it, as an ally, support. Because when you're feeling nervous or shaky, you can take an out breath. Feeling fed up, hopeless, just one in breath. All the time in the world to breathe out, all the time in the world to allow an in-breath to happen. Then you approach it as an ally rather than something you've got to be good at. It supports you rather than the other way around, you trying to get it. And then it is quite a wonderful ally. It may only come in, 10 minutes or so, it's there, and then you, okay, and it's back to walking or sitting, but you build up a sense of trust with that and let it come to you. Don't hunt it, don't chase it, don't nail it down. Person's asking, is there a chant or a practice we can do before or whilst eating? I wouldn't recommend chanting while eating. It makes a real mess of the place. Chant before you eat and practice while you eat. So chanting, or we will chant here, we chant things that express our gratitude and our gladness to be receiving food. You can also express, that sense of gratitude to the earth, gratitude, and recognizing you're eating just for the sake of respect, respectful that whatever you eat, you couldn't create it. It's come from somewhere else, the planet, basically. So can we be respectful and not overuse it, not take more than we need? So that's the recollection. Don't take more than you need, because you're taking it from a limited source. And then gratitude. So anything that does that, recollections, you can make up your own. And recognizing you often have to work with that triggering effect of taste and hunger. I want you to, go in there and get it. So food's not going to run away. Take your time, take a little bit at a time, slow it down. Keep a sense of pacing and attention. Focus on chewing. It's a respectful taking of a sacrament rather than gobbling. Sometimes the citta feels vast, spacious, and all-inclusive. Other times very intimate, relating directly to the felt sense of being and offering responses. Vast and spacious is intimate. Sometimes when you frame the word intimate, we imagine something quite small and internal. Actually, it's not exactly. It's not exactly. It is kind of internal. It's internal to consciousness. It's internal to consciousness. So the external form of consciousness is these sights and sounds and objects running around. That's what we call the external form of it. That's what sits on the surface of it. And it's quite limited. What you can see, what you can hear, what you can touch, even what you can think. But we also say there's an internal aspect of consciousness, which is receptive, open, sensing. And that has no limits. And that one feels it's kind of intimate because doesn't belong to the external domain. You see, it's not a sight or a sound or an object. It's the inner heartful knowing and responsiveness. So though you might say it's interior consciousness, it's actually bigger or more boundless than the exteriors. As you see what I mean? Sight is limited. Certain location. I can't see India from here. Right. But if you could say you can't see the moon, so there's always more than you can visually encompass. Receptivity, you can receive silence, sound, the appearance of sound, the appearance of sight, the disappearance of sight, the thought, the disappearance of thought. There's got no edges to it, really. And it's also extremely intimate in that it's immediately responsive. There's no third person in there. There's no sight, heart, and somebody else. There's just the resonances. And naturally, that's quite tender. So we associate that with intimacy. Someone's asking about paritta chanting. This is paritta chanting is particular form of chanting, particular sequence of chants, which are, I think, primarily they're suttas or extracts from suttas. And paritta is associated with something like protection. So it's the case that in monastic environments, and when people, which includes, of course, non-monastics, chanting is done to evoke a sense of blessing and protection because it contains many of the teachings of the Buddha. So it's the Pali, both the Pali language itself, and these suttas are, you can consider they've been recited millions of times through hundreds of thousands of throats over thousands of years. So there's a lot of deep resonance in that, and they're often talking about, quite profound terms, enlightenment factors, mindfulness, and so on, and the nature of the Buddha. So they're quite elevated topics. Also, just the very nature of sound itself, when it's shared, is extremely resonant and stirring. Particularly the most stirring is the human voice. So when the human voice isn't just chatting, it's actually resonating. These sounds, it's got a strong potency for uplift and inspiration, gladness and inclusivity. Because in order to chant, particularly if you chant together, you have to listen to everybody else. And if you listen and feel relaxed in your body, then you get a sense of harmony. And the voices all merge into one, which is a very beautiful occasion. This is why it's uplifting. And so sometimes people will, listen to some paritta chanting, and that just helps to create that atmosphere and that context internally. And then from there, just sound disappears, and you relax into the atmosphere of that, the resonance of that, and it deepens into meditation practice. It's got some energy in it that lifts up. Another person suffers from tinnitus, so it's another sound. When meditating, the mind goes quiet in the ear. So tinnitus is an ear problem with the auditory nerves, I think. So you get this kind of constant sound happening in your ears. So I'm constantly sitting in the middle of the ocean and hearing the wind. How can I incorporate this into my meditation? Well, that's a nice image, the ocean, sitting in the ocean. So perhaps you just imagine that. And spread your awareness over it, encompassing the wide ocean, like a gigantic bird, or gull or something, but even bigger, just the sky encompassing the ocean. And so it's a very wide perceptual field, and relax into that which is attentive to that. Make it your meditation. And the focus then is wide. Now, it's often the case that, like an image you just come up with in the middle of the ocean, the chitta more presents that as a little clue. What does this remind you of? Oh, ocean. Okay, so it's the ocean. What's wrong with the ocean? Tinnitus in my ear is a problem, but the ocean, I get used to that. How do I operate in the ocean? I learn to float and open to the sky. And so you want to look out for these images are called felt senses. They're metaphors. When you get one of those, that's it. The chitta is saying, "Hey, this is what to focus on." Chitta is kind of telling you, giving you a nudge, because the chitta is also imaginative. One of its aspects is the imaginal world, the image-forming world, and they will often give us suggestions of what the sign That word again, the sign to cultivate, is the sign of vast space. So make your chitta like vast space. Someone's asking about long-term meditation retreats, 3 months to a year in this monastery. We do a 3-month retreat every year, but and sometimes people come to be part of that, but they act as a support team, maybe 10 people. So they certainly have time to meditate, but they're often also having a, of course they do rotas, so they're not, but most mornings, some of them, 6 of them will be preparing food, 4 will just be meditating and so forth. So that's what we do. And in fact, we're not set up to accommodate a lot more people than that. Someone experiences reluctance to sit in daily formal practice, even though they know there's awareness of the benefits. Yes, I can do morning and evening chanting. I do morning and evening chanting. That's a good place to start. I think rather than, it may be useful, rather than thinking you've got to sit in daily formal practice every day, maybe just create some time when you stop doing other things. And you just start to gently unplug from other things and switch things off, unplug. And get your body comfortable. So maybe do a little bit of exercise, stretch, breathe in, breathe out, and then just quietly enjoy that. So sometimes the mind does do this kind of, oh, I don't want to sit here for another hour, so another half an hour or so. And so you have to kind of not say that, but say, well, we'll just stop doing that. Enough of that for now. That can wait till tomorrow. Relax a bit. Walk up and down a little bit. Just take yourself into it a moment at a time. And as you say, chanting does help because it gives you a lead in. If you do it and listen to it, then in a way that is tethering your chitta to a sonorous, steadying Dhamma form. So you connect to that, see where the sound goes, and allow yourself to be quiet after the sound is finished. And listen. So it can take you into the listening. And linger a little bit. Keep lingering. Lingering. Don't you've got the idea that meditation practice is good, but you probably also have an idea of it being a bit perhaps too formal and more not quite so formal. What is right effort when it comes to strong, sustained energy that is released during meditation? Well, it's a tantalizing question. Sustained energy, is it good, negative energy, destructive, joyful, intense? But by and large, your effort is to create a container, a space for that energy to be experienced within. It's not really about slowing it down or understanding it, but just create some opener form, your body form, space in the, open your eyes, space in the room around you. Till your chitta can feel it's not compelled by that energy. It's not driven by it. It's not you can sort of ride or step back from, but it's not completely driven by that. So you get that sense of detachment, dispassion. And whether it's body energy or emotional energy, not quite clear. General sign is open to stability. And soothing, steadying. It becomes possible. And then understanding. Okay. So it's a little bit another level. Stories or backgrounds on the stained glass windows that this person believes that Ajahn Sucitto helped design for the Sunyata Buddhist Center. Well, I did some, but I think the ones I designed are actually in the lodges, and the one you see on the behind Paul, I don't think I did design those. Though the person who did design them might have looked at the other ones and done something complementary. For this kind of anecdotal phase, Sunyata Retreat Center goes back a while, I don't know, 15 years or so maybe. And I go back even longer. And in my earlier years, I did a series of illuminated manuscripts on primary discourse of the Buddha, the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, where he lays out the Four Noble Truths in the Eightfold Path. So I did this in calligraphy. And particularly calligraphy I was doing was uncial script, which was a script used by the Celtic monks of old, who were probably about the 5th to the 9th or 10th centuries. And of course, a lot of them were Ireland and Scotland. Iona was a big centre for this Celtic Christianity. And lots of these people were monks. A lot of them lived in Ireland or little tiny crags off the coast of Ireland, on islands living on seagulls' eggs, and but they also did illuminated manuscripts, which are quite a treasure. And there was one, the most famous one is the Book of Kells. Kells was a town, or is a town in Ireland. And this is where this book wasn't created there. They think it was probably created in Iona, Scotland, but it was taken to Kells to protect it from Viking raiders. So it remains a national treasure, and it is truly marvelous, and a marvelous piece of work. So I've looked at that from time to time, and I think I got inspiration from it. So I was kind of having this in mind when I was doing this manuscript, and I think that was around for a while. I did a series of paintings of it, and one of the founders of Sunyata sort of had seen this and was kind of delighted, pleased by it. So when I was visiting Sunyata, he said, "Would you like to, could you do something for these windows?" I think that's how it started. So I just did some designs. It was nice to feel one's kind of bringing it back, some of this, it's kind of turning it back towards, Ireland, and bringing something back of that culture into the place where it was strongest, probably. So that's really what I have to say about that. I'm glad you appreciate them. And creativity is an expression of the citta, creating images. And I've created the images because images go deep. Words travel, but images go even deeper. They touch our imaginal centers, our heart centers, our dream place, where they, a lot of teachings are best remembered or best configured as images, stories, poems, paintings that really lodge in the mind. So that was the rationale behind the painting and also behind these illuminations, because that's it's a nice idea, isn't it? The light, which is uncreated, shining through something human created, and the light, of consciousness, or the light of awareness streaming through the various colorations of the human mind, and something beautiful being born out of that. Okay, I think we've come to the end of the question period for now, this time. So thank you for your questions. It's great. It really keeps the retreat fruitful and with input. And gives me something to bear in mind as I'm trying to support you in this strange scenario. And what we're going to suggest now is closing process. And first thing that we want to move into is to taking the 5 precepts. So this means moving from the 8 to the 5. Those of you taking the 8 precepts, you can feel, okay, you can go to the 5 precepts, have an evening meal with your partner or whatever. And so it's often it's also it just reminds us again, this is kind of like you come out of a retreat, you want to say these are my foundations, these are my benchmarks, this is where I stand on this, I stand on these precepts, so that kind of lodges there, and you can remember why. In a world of many influences and seduction and pressures, it's good to have precepts as a foundation for stability, to have your no boundaries. If you can create no's consciously, willingly, with wisdom, then your yeses become more fruitful and clear and well guided. And so the 5 precepts help us to get a sense of where we place no, so that yes can arise more fruitfully. So for people who like to, we could maybe just take a minute or two. I think we'll take a little time for Paul to get the chanting on the screen. So let's take a few minutes for that to happen, and then we can move into that and then conclude with some meditation together. Okay, if we're ready, would someone like to request 3 refuges and the 5 precepts?
Pancha Sedani Yajama Dudiyampi Mayam Bhante Tisanena Saha Pancha Sedani Yajama Dudiyampi Mayam Bhante Tisanena Saha Pancha Sedani Yajama.
So imagine quite a few of you are aware of this form, but for people who are new to it and feel they'd like to participate, however tentatively, in the ritual of it, it does help to, hear one's voice saying these things. When you hear yourself saying it, definitely takes it a bit deeper. Then the way this is done is the request has been made, and then I think if Paul moves the screen, the thing around, you'll see there. Keep going. There it is. You'll see Namo Tassa, which is I say that, I chant that 3 times, and then you chant it 3 times. Then we do Buddham Saranam Gacchami, and then you do Buddham Saranam Gacchami. So those 3 lines we take separately, and then we take the precepts, each precept one at a time, in Pali and in English. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Buddhang saranam gacchami.
Buddham saranam gacchami.
Dhammang saranam gacchami.
Dhammam saranam gacchami.
Sanghang saranam gacchami.
Sangham saranam gacchami.
Tutiyampi buddhang saranam gacchami.
Tutiyampi buddhang saranam gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranam gacchami.
Tutiyampi dhammam
saranam
gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranam gacchami.
Tutiyampi sangham saranam gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddham saranam gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhang saranam gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranam gacchami.
Tatiyampi saranam gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranam gacchami.
Tatiyampi sangham saranam gacchami.
Saranagammanam nititang. Where are we now? Okay. Panati pata vera mani sikapadang samadhiyami.
Pata veramani sikapatang samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from taking the life of any living creature.
Take the precept to refrain from taking the life of any living creature.
Adinna dana veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
อาทินนาทานาเวรมณีตังสมาธิยามิ
Undertake the precept to refrain from taking that which is not given.
Take the precept refrain from taking that which is not given.
Game sumicha chara veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
กาเมสุวิชาจารเวรมณี
Undertake the precept to refrain from sexual misconduct.
I undertake the precept to refrain from sexual conduct.
Motsavada veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
มุสาวาทาเวรมณีสิกขาปะทังสมาธิยามิ
Undertake the precept to refrain from lying, harmful speech.
I undertake the precept to refrain from lying.
Sura miraya majjapama tathana veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
สุราเมวัตมาเวรมณีสิกขาปะทังสมาธิยามิ
Undertake the precept to refrain from consuming intoxicating drink and drugs which lead to carelessness.
I undertake the precept to refrain from consuming intoxicating drink and drugs which lead to carelessness.
Imani panchasika patani silena sugating yanti silena bhoga sampada silena nibboting yanti tasma silang visodaye. Sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
So as we come to the closure of a session, as I've suggested, there are really no bells and really no endings. This one should not think in such terms, but there are points when one looks back and one reflects on the causes and conditions that have made the occasion possible. Some of those in yourself, your world, your body, your mind, your friends, your situation has allowed you this time to step out, step back. Your determination has allowed you to stay with this. So feeling of gratitude and modana, and acknowledge these qualities in yourself and support them. You find this practice fruitful, you owe it to yourself to look for the causes and conditions that make it possible, and be careful of the conditions that make it impossible. Feeling you can never take a break, anything like that, or you can't do it. It's much too difficult. Remember, this retreat. It's like feel your way. Feel your own way. Win it. Don't make it something that's so difficult you can't do it. Know your measure, know your range, and you'll benefit from it. So acknowledge these, acknowledge the obstacles that you need to be careful of. High standards, idea you're going to sit like a rock for 5 days. Yeah? And you realize it's a time to unplug and receive blessings and let things, find your stable place and open to that. You should also bear in mind conditions, that I've supported in terms of, gratitude to Sunyata primarily, and for hosting the session. It wouldn't have happened without them. And as you can see, manifestly, right now there's Paul. There are other beings there, but that's the man in the chair. doing the things he's done, and without any fluster, and without getting tense about it all. It's nice to feel that Paul's also been sitting there, meditating and listening and with it, and especially, so thank you, very wonderful Anumodana, Paul, and much appreciation for that. Paul's just a volunteer, helping out, offering his services, and that's Sunyata. So, of course, another special delight for me was to see Mike O'Brien on the retreat, who's been holding Sunyata for quite a few years, and it's quite a thing to hold, because as you see, Sunyata doesn't charge anything. That's pretty amazing, really. You don't see much of that. How do they survive? They've got to pay electricity, food, everything, just on trusting and generosity. And of course, they've got right now they've got debt because it's not easy. But yet still the act of faith and the trust and just the sustaining it through that time. And Mike's been a big part of that. Trying to just hold it together and develop it out of a sense of this is good for people. So big Anumodana to Mike. Another special delight was see Stan and Claire on the retreat, who were, I think, the original founders of the place, who passed it on a few years back. So Anumodana to them, blessings to them, and see the results of what's come around through your acts of faith and work and commitment. So much appreciation for these conditions and causes. We take it right back, and clearly, I've been helping out best I can, and I'm sitting on a support field, monastery, okay, not on a cloud. And all that goes, all that requires, and then we will go back to Gautama the Buddha, who's set the wheel rolling, and it's never actually stopped rolling for these thousands of years. So, Anumodana, also just our sense of awe. This thing can still keep going, and that's a salutation to the power of the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. And that you don't try and pay it back. You just open to it, and really you pay it back by being part of it. You're the people who carry that forward. Just like I'm one of the people who help carry it forward. Once you get into it, your practice carries it forward. So remember, your practice, your continuation of practice is part of your expression of gratitude and responsibility for the teaching. You're part of it. You're not just a passive recipient. Every time you work with your stuff, you're helping the Dhamma move along. So Anumodana to all of you too. And let's just spend a little time, maybe 30 minutes, 30 minutes, just reflecting on what's valuable, what we can take with us from the retreat, or what we need to work on, where we feel inspiration, what you've seen in yourself. The recognition of, if you look on those screen, of people there from quite a range of countries. This is international. When you look into, what you're looking at, host Sunyata, a little place near Limerick in west coast of Ireland. Amazing thing to be participating in. So much metta, karuna, and also wise understanding of the preciousness of the occasion, the value of it, and the value and the preciousness of working in your own territory, in your own domain. This is how we work for the welfare of others. This is how it's always been. So let's just take some time to consider things and put down some markers for the future. How you can support and help each other and not let the light fade. Make commitments, resolutions for you. And when we get to coming out of the meditation, I'll hand it over to Paul, say his few remarks, and then a few moments chance where you might have a few words with myself or with each other. So we can close in a kind of fairly informal manner. So the opening, if you will, next few minutes, 4 or 5 minutes, opening into the sense fields, the way things manifest the surface of consciousness. Yeah. Whatever that does for you. Find a stable place in that. So you, yeah.